oh my gosh, nutrition is so important, but it's not the whole story. It's not everything. And here I was, somebody who was so well nourished, eating really, truly like vegetables,
Clean
cruciferous
eating.
vegetables, clean eating,
Yep.
organ meats, all organic, everything grown on our own like homestead, right? And it wasn't enough for me to overcome my health challenge. And so that was when I started really digging into, well, what are the other aspects, right? What are the other aspects that impact a person's ability to heal?
Have you been diagnosed with MS and you're looking outside your typical medical system for more answers? You're definitely not alone. Hi, I'm Adrienne. I'm a nutritionist and a certified MS Integrative Nutritional Health Coach, and I've helped and interviewed so many people who have reversed this disease holistically, and so can you. If you're serious about getting back to health and learning all the steps to do so, join my community. I've got coaching sessions. I've got 2 courses, a mini course and a 12-week course. I've got special guests that have deep smarts and healing that come on once a month. And I've got lots of resources. So if you'd like to scale your healing and get back to the healthy person you once were, come join me. So just go to my webpage, nourishyourway.com, and hit join the community button. It's that simple. So let's dive into the topic today. Welcome back to the podcast. And today I have a really incredible guest with me today. I'm so excited. She had me on her podcast a couple of weeks ago, and I invited her to be on mine. So Elainie Welch, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you, Adrienne. It's so fun to be on here with you. I rarely guest, and so I'm very selective when I do because I'm protective of my time. And yeah,
I appreciate that. Oh,
I
thank
so
you so
loved
much.
our conversation when you were on my podcast, and I thought, what a great excuse to get to talk with you again. So yeah.
Oh, well, okay, we're friends now.
Yes, we're buddies.
Now, I know that you did not have MS. You did not, overcome MS, but you did overcome something else. And the reason I'm having you on today is because your podcast is all about stress reduction and how stress was a catalyst for what happened to you. And so that's why you're on. And so can you tell us what happened? What symptoms did you have way back when? What year was it? How old you were? And what did you discover? What kind of illness? Like, what did you have? So yeah, just take the reins.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, thank you. I love having the opportunity to tell my story. I don't do it very often, but the biggest thing that was happening for me, the journey that I moved through that initially honestly led to the start of everything, the podcast, the documentary, every project I've worked on since was infertility. And it was really a surprising challenge because I was already a licensed certified nutritionist. I'd been studying for 3 years and I'd had my license for about a year when I officially considered that we were probably in the throes of infertility. And I was like, prior to this, going through this, being a nutritionist, in my brain, it was like, nutrition solves everything. I don't know if you can hear my rooster, but he's cockle-doodling away in the background.
I can't. That's cool though.
Yes, well, growing our own food has been part of the healing solution, but being a nutritionist, you just feel like, yes, nutrition is the answer. It's everything, right? Like every profession kind of gets, I would say, almost like myopic about what it is they're doing and that it is the solution. It's always the missing piece, right? That's kind of how we get as health professionals. And of course, like I wouldn't be a nutritionist if I didn't think nutrition was such an important component, right? So of course we get that way, but it was a very difficult thing to go through. And I was honestly kind of embarrassed. And it was like, I didn't want to share that part of my life because it felt like a failure. And here I was helping. I mean, I helped several women in my early years of being a nutritionist get pregnant after dealing with infertility. And so why wasn't that working for me? And I was working with people with heart disease and working with people with cancer and like helping people through nutrition. And I was like, why isn't this working? And I would say I had a whole litany of other things going on that at the time, being a holistic professional, I understood they mattered, but I didn't understand how much. And one of those was that I was having constant headaches. I mean, three migraines I would consider a week, and I was having insomnia. And I would say I've had headaches and insomnia since I was a child. They've appeared at different times in my life. And so my podcast isn't just about stress, it's about all the pillars that contribute to a person's healing journey or disease state. But stress is such a big one. And for me in particular, it was one of the most important. There's so many aspects that contribute to our health. It's our nutrition, our movement, our sleep, our stress levels, our mindset, our limiting beliefs, our past traumas, like emotions that we're holding on to or suppressing, our sense of purpose, our sense of community, like all of these things contribute. And for every person, it's going to be something different, right? What's the area that they're like lacking in the most, that needs their attention the most? And for me, that was stress. I didn't realize it at the time. I don't know. I'll just keep going if you want me to.
Yeah. What kind of stress do you think you were going through?
Well, that's a good question. I honestly think I've been stressed without realizing it because I'm not high strung. I've been stressed since I was a child, and I never felt stressed out. So if people were like, "Oh, are you stressed out?" The way I viewed stress was I thought of somebody who's really like agitated all the time and flustered and anxious. And I wasn't those things, but stress can be really insidious. And, I grew up, my parents did the best they could. My dad had a very bad temper. And I once heard Ryan Reynolds describe his dad as a flesh-covered landmine. It made me laugh so hard. It was so relatable. I mean, he was loving and he loved us, but he was unpredictable. And I grew up in a household that felt unsafe in the sense of I never knew if a mistake I made was going to send him over the edge. And he also had undiagnosed OCD, which if you've ever lived with somebody with OCD and it's undiagnosed and it's severe, it can be hellish. I mean, he had his own set of like rules and requirements that had to be met. And by the way, having strict rules and requirements doesn't really meld well with having children because children just don't do what you want them to do. They're living their own lives. They're kids. They're going to relate to the world the way kids do, and never having a single thing out of place or like clothing left out or a shoe in the doorway, like to never leave any mess anywhere in the house is just not how kids operate. And so my dad was on high alert all the time. His nervous system was stressed out and I was stressed out. I just felt unsafe. I felt unsafe because he could blow up at any moment and it could just be a little thing that would send him over the edge. So I would say I'd been stressed out. That was stress to my nervous system, to feel afraid all the time of making mistakes. Not that he was like incredibly violent physically, but it was a violent eruption in terms of
mentally.
Yeah, mentally, emotionally, verbally, how it manifested. Things could get thrown, holes could get punched in the wall. And it was scary, right? It was scary as a kid.
Well, that's violent.
Yes, it's violent. Right. It is. And, he did a lot of work and to fix that, it actually ended up that he had quadruple bypass when he was 49. His dad died of a first and fatal heart attack at the age of 50. My dad almost died from one at the age of 49. And actually the thing his doctor said is he needed to work on anger management, that would be the kind of not cure, but the thing he needed to do to improve his heart. So at that point, he started doing work, but I was already, like by the time he really started to change, I was a teenager. So all that time as a child that built my whole childhood experience and just my whole psyche and persona. And then that fear of making mistakes carried into adulthood. I've always been very perfectionist, have a really hard time, really stressed out if I get criticism on something I'm doing. And I just think it's constant noise, right? This fear of making mistakes and this trauma that I was carrying from my childhood. And going into school and feeling like just this pressure to perform all the time. And then I was in a church that was very like perfectionist in itself. It was like, you know, everything had to be done exactly right. And it was very like performance oriented. It was a very unhealthy, very toxic environment. It ended up shutting down, I mean, for good reason. But it was like, I just never moved out of this pressure to be perfect and this pressure to perform. And I had been that way since a child. And when my church closed, I felt like I had no direction because the church had kind of been my direction for a long time. And I was always like striving to create this image of myself that was like, I don't know, perfect, right? And I was just always defined what perfection was by other people's standards. So when it wasn't my dad, it was my church and their church, the church leaders. And so when the church closed, it was like, I just went to what's the next thing I can do to prove myself. And I moved into working in a chiropractic office where I was the COO. And I took on all the operations of this clinic. And there were a lot of barriers that that clinic was facing. It's in a small town. And I became the COO at the beginning of 2020. Well, guess how hard it was to get numbers up in 2020 when you're in an office, when people have to physically come in and people are afraid to leave their houses, right?
Right.
And my boss did not really seem to understand. Like, it was like the number should be going up no matter what. And here I am again with my fear of failure and this need to be perfect. And I just was like burning the candle at both ends. I mean, I was working 12-hour days. I was not sleeping at night. I would wake up in that classic adrenal fatigue pattern at like 2 a.m. and be awake until 5 a.m. And then I was going to a 5 a.m. workout class so that I could, like, because I had to be at work by 7:15 and I often left work by 7:15 or 8 o'clock at night. So I was like not getting anything I needed, and I was not handling the stress well. I was getting more and more and more wrapped up in my need to validate myself through this job. It had been like a need to validate myself since childhood through this really toxic church culture. It just was carrying on. It was like constantly I needed to prove myself. But yes, it just was this continuous need to perform, never rest. You're never doing enough. You always have to be doing more. And I was like, I carried that whole mentality with me into my workplace. And it was expected of me too. I mean, my boss already had that mentality. Nothing was ever celebrated. No wins were ever celebrated. It was like, as soon as something went well, it was like, well, how could we be doing it better? And so it just was like, I'm realizing now how much I've just had that mentality my entire life. But I started at that job in 2019, and that was the year we started trying to get pregnant. By end of 2020 had been a year. We got pregnant and I had a miscarriage, and it happened all around the same time that something very stressful was happening in my family. And anyway, so just a lot of hard things were happening. And I ended up going to see a kind of functional medicine specialist and was talking to her about it. And when we got to my sleep, she was like, well, you need to sleep if you want to get pregnant. And I was just like, well, I don't know how to fix this. Like, I lay awake I spend all day working on this job where I feel such high pressure. And it's like my thoughts need space to process. And that all happens between 2 and 5 a.m. And I'm trying to like still maintain physical activity and get up and work out. And so,
oh my gosh. So you're laying in bed at night and you're thinking about, okay, how can I fix the problems at work, right? So you have these looping thoughts in your mind, and that's why you can't sleep.
Right, exactly. Yes, ruminating, looping. Yes, and always just feeling like, oh my gosh, if this fails, I'm going to look like a failure. I'm in a small town. Everybody will know. Like, right?
Oh.
Yeah. And so fast forward to about 2.5 years into that. We're still not pregnant. We've been trying for 2.5 years. Never even since the miscarriage, I thought maybe we'd get pregnant again after the miscarriage. That's what a lot of people say, is like, well, you got pregnant once, now it'll be easier. That wasn't true for us. And I had a set of unusual circumstances in that I got a cold, and it was still during kind of COVID time. And so we had to wait for our COVID test results before we could come back to work. That was the way we had set it up. I got that. I did the COVID test. I had to wait 5 days. At that time, it was like early days, right? And I had that 5 days off at home. And I started sleeping better, and my mood became so much better. And I was like more mentally alert, and I was so much happier. But I felt so committed to this job that it was like I almost couldn't see, like, oh, when you're not at work and you're not having to worry about work, you're a different person and you're in a much better state of mind. When that 5 days ended, I went back to work, but it was only for about a week, because then the doctor and it was a chiropractic office, the main chiropractor, the assistant chiropractor, and the receptionist all got COVID. So they were all out. So the office just closed.
Oh, okay.
They had to close. So I had been gone for 5 days. I was back a few days. Then they all were gone for almost 2 weeks. I mean, I think it was like at that point, they'd reduced it to 7 days. So they were gone for the minimum amount of time. They were not better when they
quarantining, right?
Yes,
yes. In quotes, quarantine.
It was so ridiculous, the whole thing, right?
Was.
So they came back at the end of the recommended 7 days. Guess what? They were still infectious. They all came back. I got COVID from them. So I had this cold. I had this 5-day break. Then I had this 7 to 9 day break. I can't remember, that the office was closed. Then I got COVID and I had to leave the office again. So, and then we hit our winter break, which is a week off from work. So I ended up being out of the office almost a whole month. And it finally was enough space away from the job that in that month, I was sleeping so much better. I was so much happier. And it was getting close to having to go back into work. And my husband said, how would you feel if you could quit? And I just started crying. And it was such a moment where I was like, I have to get out of this job. And it was a very I'll just say it was a toxic job. It was a toxic job. It was a toxic environment. My boss was a toxic person.
Yeah. He
was narcissistic. He was controlling. I'd been feeling like everything was all my fault and nothing. It was just a crazy environment. And I went straight into it from a toxic, narcissistic, abusive church environment out of a kind of abusive home environment.
Oh my gosh. And then work environment too. So you got it all.
Right. So no wonder, all these years after all of this, no wonder my body does not feel like it's safe to have children. Of course it doesn't. I'm not sleeping. I'm not resting. I'm
sympathetic mode the whole time, right?
Yes. I've been in fight or flight since I was probably 2 years old. I mean, I just was of course I couldn't have a kid, right? It's so obvious. But when you feel but nutrition should be able to fix the supplements, I was taking 42 different supplements a day. I mean, just trying to support my body and exercising and eating well. And yeah, so I had this really profound moment. I felt like, God, you gave me this job. You opened this door. I have this opportunity to be a blessing in my community. I've wanted this for so long. And I felt so torn about quitting because I felt like God had opened this door. And if I quit, then I would be letting him down. I was like, I failed, right? This is my view. I was really upset about it, but I was going to go in and quit. I mean, my husband and I talked. I said, you're right. I have to get out of there. Now that I've been out of there a month, I finally see the separation. I've got to walk away. I had relationships with so many of the patients that came in. It made it really hard. I mean, I loved our practice members. I loved being a positive part of their lives. And I loved the mission of the business. And I felt like it was going to be a failure to quit. But I just was like, okay, God, I don't know. I don't know if this is right, but I can't do it anymore. And I went in that day. I asked for a meeting with my boss. I went in to quit. And when I got there, he fired me.
You're like, yes. So that was the universe talking to you.
Yeah. I walked out, and what I heard so clear is like as if it was my own voice speaking loud. It was so clear. It was, Elainie, I want you to be happy. And it was like I was confusing this unhappiness with like purpose and mission and like the tension of a very unhealthy relationship and an unhealthy environment and an unhealthy workplace. I was confusing that tension with like growth. And it was growth, but it wasn't like
Healthy growth.
Ordained healthy growth.
Yeah.
Right. And so it was such a freeing moment because it took the whole weight of the decision off of my shoulders. And that's how it had to be. It had to be that way because I walked out of it 1,000,000 pounds lighter.
Because you would have felt guilty
Yes.
if you would have quit.
Yes, I think I would have been, knowing myself, I probably would have been thinking back on it in my 70s. Like, did I make a decision? Should I have stayed there? Was God about to like unfold something new? Like, you know, I think I would have been ruminating it well into my later years. And so it's how it had to happen. And I walked out of it and I was so happy. And I just started, the first thing I started doing was working with somebody to release my past emotional traumas and to start just pulling at the thread of like, why is it that I end up in these situations where I'm so pressured to be perfect and I'm so like everything in my life is so dictated by what people think of me and whether I measure up to their expectations. And I had to just do a lot of work on myself and go back and undo those patterns of thinking that were so performance oriented that just made me so stressed out all the time. And yeah, within months, within just probably, let's see, I left my job at the beginning of February. A week later, I fell down my stairs. I slipped on the ice going out, fell down my stairs, fractured my spine. So I was actually like in this, I had been actively looking for other jobs because I just was like, oh, I have to go find another job. And I was forced to just take like a month off. I didn't have much mobility. I mean, talk about, you can't even go to the bathroom by yourself. Oh my gosh. Like that
was the universe again.
Yes.
The universe said, Elainie, you need to rest more and you need to just like, calm down, calm your nervous system down.
Right.
You're
okay with just being.
And you need to stop and just rest.
Yes. Right? Yes. It was like, girl, just be for just a minute, just be. Yeah. Like, that's enough. Just be. Yeah. So it was, I mean, and thank God I wasn't pregnant. Thank God I didn't have a young toddler. I mean, my husband had to help me put on clothes. He had to help me go to the bathroom. Like, and this part of my spine that fractured was the last vertebrae that controls your legs, but thankfully it didn't interfere with the nerve. And so to come that close to being paralyzed was really like, it gave me a thing every day that I could start out being grateful for, like in that moment. And gratitude is the antidote to that stress, right? And so I started gratitude journaling while I was just stuck on the couch and in bed. Started gratitude journaling. I finally started resting. I started letting my nervous system go back into rest and repair, move out of fight or flight. I stopped looking for jobs. I stopped worrying about it. My husband, everything had lined up perfectly. My husband had gotten a new job. It had come with a pay raise. The pay raise made the difference for me not having a job. And so he just was like, just be home. It's okay. Like, why don't we just focus on your health?
You're not going to starve.
Right. Yes. Like, we'll just tighten a few things up and we're honestly going to be totally fine. And so all of this pressure was removed of I have to do and I have to be and I have to accomplish and I have to, and I just rested. And I started doing the emotional work. I started doing the gratitude journaling. I started meditating. We got an infrared sauna. I started doing sauna sessions. I just started doing everything I possibly could to unravel all the stress of what I had been in for so long. And I realized that's not a luxury everybody has. But the truth is, I could have done the work through 15-minute meditation sessions in the morning before I went to work, and then finding a way to process and leave work at work, right? I could have done it other ways, but I was grateful for the fact that I could just be home and I could just focus on it. Within a few months of that, we were pregnant. I mean, just no doubt that was the barrier that was standing in our way. So many things, of course, but it wasn't nutrition and it wasn't supplements. It wasn't movement, right? Those weren't the things that were standing as barriers. Now, if I hadn't been nourishing my body with movement and food, maybe those would have been barriers, but they weren't, because I was already taking care of that part of my life that I just left this whole part of my life completely untaken care of, you know, in my goal to be and do and perform. That is my very, very, very long answer to your question, but that is, I know you'll just, it's the truth of it. It's such a complicated story. It's like, where do you even begin with that? But
so you didn't really have any symptoms except for not being able to get pregnant. Is that right?
The headaches and the insomnia.
Insomnia, and you did say you had a migraine headache.
Yeah, I was having
times a week.
Yeah, I was having regular migraine headaches, and some of that was due to my teeth, and I got that problem resolved. I saw a biologic dentist that resolved a lot of the headaches, but the rest of it resolved when I stopped being so stressed out all the time. And now when I get a headache, I know exactly why. And it is always when I'm stressed out about something. And I know.
So really, you put that pressure on yourself. You learned, right? You learned. And we all learn by doing things, right? So that's great that you figured all that out. So, okay. So what did you do after that? I mean, should I ask you about like what you do today? About your podcast, and you have a documentary about, should we get into that right now?
Sure. Yeah. Whatever you want to ask. I mean, I'm an open book, but yeah, I mean, my work with my own stress and realizing what an important piece that was led to so many. I mean, I was realizing it long before I actually quit my job, right? I was realizing I'd been stressed out for a long time. I just didn't think that quitting my job would have to be part of it. But it led to my podcast. It was, you know, it led to these conversations, because the thing my eyes opened up to was, oh my gosh, nutrition is so important, but it's not the whole story. It's not everything. And here I was, somebody who was so well nourished, eating really, truly like vegetables, cruciferous vegetables, clean eating, organ meats, all organic, everything grown on our own like homestead, right? And it wasn't enough for me to overcome my health challenge. And so that was when I started really digging into, well, what are the other aspects, right? What are the other aspects that impact a person's ability to heal? And so much of the work on the podcast I've done has been born out of that. You know, now the podcast is Renegade Remission. And it's a podcast for people who are facing terminal and chronic illness, who have basically been told, much like I was told we had less than a 1% chance of getting pregnant naturally. You know, when we went to a fertility clinic early in the days, we were basically told, you will not get there without IVF. You will not get pregnant naturally. It's not going to happen. And I can't relate to somebody who's been given a terminal diagnosis, because that wasn't my journey at that time. But I can relate to looking down this barrel of impossible odds and having somebody tell you this just isn't going to happen. And so that was a catalyst for me to work with this group of people facing terminal and chronic illnesses who have been told, you're not going to heal, you're not going to get better. And the truth is, that's not true. You can. I mean, for every incurable illness that's out there, there's somebody who's healed from it. And so to me, it was like, I need to do this work to show people that there is hope, that you can overcome nearly impossible odds, even a 1% odd, right? You can overcome those odds, but you have to do the work. And that means looking at the pillars of your life that are asking for attention. So if it's nutrition, then addressing that. If it's movement, if it's sleep, if it's your stress management, if it's your mindset and limiting beliefs, if it's past traumas, if it's a lack of purpose or a lack of community, it means doing the work to address those things, because disease is not random. It's not accidental. It happens for a reason. And yes, we could have done IVF to get pregnant, but I would have been ignoring the fact that my body was telling me it's not safe to get pregnant. I don't feel safe. And I had to look at, why don't you feel safe? What am I not doing for you? And so that's like, so much of the medical world is just Band-Aid, 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 Band-Aid. Take this prescription, do this surgery, right? But nobody's really looking at like, what is the reason? What's the root cause? Like, are you waking up in the morning feeling like life is meaningless? Well, if that's your orientation, you're not giving your body any reason to heal. It doesn't feel like it's living for anything. So it's like just doing the hard work. And that was so much of the podcast. Was I went through a lot of so many different modalities, I would say, while I was trying to find a way to heal from the infertility. And it was the right combination of things for me that I ended up finding. And that's just what every person has to do. But I explored so many things and I learned about so many things. And that's what inspired the documentary as well. I wanted to take those stories and document them in real time. I mean, nothing motivates people to change like seeing what happens in real time through lived experience when people make those changes. And so with the documentary, we started working with families who were facing pretty impossible odds, incurable illnesses. And we're helping them transform their lives through nutrition, through movement, through sleep, through community, through purpose, through stress management, through mindset. So we're implementing all of those pillars and helping them find what is it in their lives that they need that's going to be the catalyst for their own healing. And then we're documenting those healing journeys as they unfold. And it's been a really powerful piece of work, and I'm really excited about it. We're about almost 2 years. In June, we'll be 2 years into filming, and we probably have another 1.5 years or so of filming left. And then about 1 year of editing is what I've allocated. So I'm thinking it'll come out 2029 probably. But I'm so excited about it because there's so many documentaries that are out there that are talking about, here's the right nutrition. Here's how your mindset can influence your body. But very, very few have actually shown how those things work by following stories in a verite style like we are, where it's the lived experience. And so, yeah, people are going to fall in love with the families that we're following, just like we have, and they're going to be invested in their stories. And every day I'm praying, for their outcomes, but I just believe that it's going to be a film that people need to see because it's going to empower themselves. They'll feel seen and heard when they watch these stories because it will reflect their own lives. And I think that that's empowering when you're like looking at somebody, you're like, okay, if they could do it, I could do it, right? That's what we need. That was what helped me during my fertility journey, was reading all these stories of couples that had conceived against the odds. And I just kept telling myself, okay, if they can do it, I can do it. If they can do it, I can do it. And so I think that that's what a documentary can do in a way that no other form of information can do.
Wow. What an incredible project you're working on. And to know that you're going to finish it. I mean, that's dedication. That is true dedication. I gotta hand you a gold star for that. I mean,
thank you.
Okay, so how many families are you helping?
Right now we have 3 families, and we'd like to add 1 or 2 more. And we just do that as funding allows. We just brought on our newest subject, Diana. We just brought her on January. And she's doing awesome. I mean, she's already just had significant gains through pretty simple interventions, right? I mean, first of all, she just needed somebody to hear her story. She's been so marginalized by the medical system. But it's just amazing what can happen when people start to feel hope again and agency and like they're taking steps forward. And where all of our families were basically at the place where they'd done as much as they could, but had come up against a medical system that just said there's nothing more you can do, you just have to prepare for the decline, all of their hope and all of their agency had been taken away. And when you can give that back to somebody, it's amazing what can turn around in their life because they feel motivated again. And that's what I'm hoping to accomplish with the whole documentary, is for all of the viewers who are out there who are facing that same sentence, there's nothing more we can do. There's nothing more we can do, for them to be like, oh, there's so much more. There's so much more I can do.
Elainie, what you're doing is truly amazing. Just because we're running out of time, thank you for explaining your story and showing us like what stress can look like and how it can be a catalyst for disease or not getting pregnant, or, there's a lot of things that stress can bring on. But I want to share so tell us again what your podcast is called.
Yeah, so the podcast is called Renegade Remission. And it's for anybody facing a chronic or terminal illness. So cancer, MS, heart disease, ALS, dementia, Alzheimer's, whatever it is. It's designed around the pillars that I've discussed with you. And I just move through each of the pillars, one pillar in an episode, and discuss how it impacts our health. And I keep my episodes really short, 15 minutes or less. Mm-hmm. And I keep the steps really simple. That was something I loved, Adrienne, about your approach, right? It's the same. Very, very simple, very small steps, very doable, things that you can start today and accomplish and feel good about. And so it's always keeping things one tiny step at a time, because that was what I realized early on in my career as a nutritionist, is there are people like me who will go very all or nothing, but there's so many people that just need baby steps, and baby steps can be enough. And if it's the catalyst for a major change, then minor changes at the beginning are just the way to start.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, if people have questions or they want to reach out to you, how would they find you?
The best way is to go to my website, probably. So it's therenegadenutritionist.com. The podcast was originally called Renegade Nutrition. My social media handle on Instagram is _renegade_nutritionist. And the business name that I have is Renegade Nutrition. Renegade Remission was just born out of the fact that the podcast no longer focused solely on nutrition. I covered so many aspects of healing, and so I didn't want to have that limit on it. But yeah, so it's all under Renegade Nutrition, but the podcast is Renegade Remission. And yeah, you can find me at therenegadenutritionist.com. And the documentary is called Alive and Well, Healing from Within.
Elainie, thank you so much. I really appreciate you. Like a last positive message, what would you tell somebody listening?
Honestly, you are in complete control of your health. There is nothing stopping you from getting better. You just have to take a step forward. I want people to feel really empowered. I want them to feel agency. I want them to feel hope. The body is amazing. It is fully capable of healing. All we need to do is remove the barriers that are preventing it from doing that. And when you remove those barriers, the body can do amazing things. It can overcome impossible odds. I mean, if we could get pregnant with less than a 1% chance, then you can overcome your diagnosis, whatever it is, right? So it's possible. It's all possible. All of it's on the table. Just don't limit yourself to what you've been told. Trust in your body's ability to heal and remove the barriers that are keeping it from doing that.
I love that. Great message. Thanks so much, Elainie. Again,
oh my gosh.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adrienne, and thank you for everybody who's listening today. And yeah, what I always say in my sign-off is go be renegades.
I love it. If you liked the episode, please share it and rate the podcast, and then also join my newsletter. And it's easy to get on my list. Just go to my website, nourishyourway.com, go to the newsletter tab, and sign up. And then I'll give you healing information once a week, so you won't miss anything. And I also include a recipe of the week. Thanks for joining me today, and you'll hear from me in the near future.